Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, ladies and gentlemen. I will not go against my previous practice that I would like to not start the lecture without giving you the summary of the previous lecture, because now I know that you have become habitual and you enjoy the summary of the previous lecture, and one objective of the summary of the previous lecture is to give you the connectivity in this discussion, because these lectures are linked with each other, and particularly nowadays we are talking about the problems of the regression analysis, and these problems are related to each other because there may be something mix up, and I would like to make clarity that you do not allow the things to be mixed up. So if you remember, in the previous lecture we talked about one of the major problem of the regression analysis, that was the heteroscedasticity. What is the heteroscedasticity? In one line I am going to tell you that if the error variance, the variance of the residual term is not constant over time, we say that there is a problem of heteroscedasticity. I would like to take you far behind in the first or second lecture, when we assumed that the linear regression, classical linear regression model assumes that there is homoscedasticity. So this is opposite of that rather than equal variance or constant variance, there is a varying variation in the residual variance. So what is, I told you that what is the heteroscedasticity, then we came to know that from where it comes into our data. The first was that the error learning model, I would not like to explain it. The other was that over time there is improvement in the data collection. Then there was another thing, that there is skewness in the population. For example, the education in rural areas is much different from the distribution of education in the rural areas is much different from the developed areas like Rawalpindi, Islamabad, Lahore and Karachi. Similarly, one of the other reason was the specification bias. If we are unable to set our model in an appropriate way, then there is also a problem of heteroscedasticity. And I remember that I also told you that if there is outlier effect, outlier is something that is much different from the other observation. You can say something from the other population. So this was some of the reasons of the heteroscedasticity. Then our purpose was not to just explain this, but we were interested that if there is heteroscedasticity, what are the repercussion, consequences, and you can say the drawbacks of our regression analysis. So we saw that our OLS estimators are no more below. They are linear, they are unbiased, but unfortunately they are not best, because now they have not the minimum variance among their linear competitors. So what was the problem? If their variance is not the minimum, immediately you now come to you will go up, catch the idea that when the standard error will be high and your hypothesis testing will be extremely and negatively affected, your the confidence interval will become widened, and your acceptance reasons of the null hypothesis will enlarge. Then we started to how to detect this. It is a matter of intuition, and at this time I would like to again clear that most of the time, majority, the heteroscedasticity is the problem of cross-sectional data rather than the time series data. It may occur in the time series data, but it is a very rare chance. Then we talked about that how to detect it. The first, we applied some of the graphical methods. Then we said that we should apply the Park test, the Spearman's rank correlation, Glaser test, Goldfrey, Kohn test. There are so many tests, no need to explain here, because I remember I explained them in very detail, and you were with me with keen interest as I was writing also on the I was writing on the whiteboard. So at the last we studied that how we can get rid of this problem, because the problem is serious, and unless and until we remove them, there is the problem of estimation. And the simplest was that we use the weighted least square. So the problem of the regression continues. The first we covered was the autocorrelation, the second we covered was the heteroscedasticity, and today we will go to the third one, that is the autocorrelation. So first let me explain that what we are going to cover today in this respect. First of all, it is necessary to see that what is autocorrelation, because if you are unable to identify that what is the problem, then it means you are not going in the right direction and you can't go for its detection, its remedial measures and its consequences. We will see that what are the reasons, like multicollinearity and like heteroscedasticity. We will see that what are the reasons behind that autocorrelation appears in the data. So after this we will see that if we ignore this and we blindly run the OLS, and we will see that what are the consequences, what are the implications. If the implications are not serious, we can run the OLS estimator, but at the same time, if the problem is serious and severe, we should have been extraordinarily careful, because whole of our results are based on our such regression analysis, and if there is problem, you are not going to defend, the people will object and you will be answerless. We will detect this. We will be using different methods of detection as we did in the previous heteroscedasticity and multicollinearity. And the end, as usual, we will be talking about some of the remedial measures, that how we can remove this problem out of the regression so that our analysis becomes reliable and people do not object this. So what is the autocorrelation? Autocorrelation is a problem of time series data. Look at this, what is happening. The heteroscedasticity is a problem of cross-sectional data, and autocorrelation is most of the time. There are no hard and fast rules. Do not go for this, that 2 plus 2 is equal to 4 every time. We are talking about something statistical and there is an error margin. So you should not assume that when I say that it is a cross-sectional or time series problem, you should immediately say that it is not the problem for the other data. It may occur, but the chances are very, very small. So it is problem of time series data as the error term. So look at this, we will be talking about the error term of the cross-section unit is not most of the time correlated. You have cross-section unit, Pakistan, India, Sri Lanka, Nepal and many other countries. Now there is no link of the error terms, because one thing happening in one country most of the time is not affecting directly in the other country. So we will be talking about that it is not happening, the autocorrelation most of the time in cross-sectional data. However, if it occurs, do not worry, so we will be calling it the spatial autocorrelation. That is not over time, but it is over space. So what you have to remember, that it is not a problem of cross-sectional data, but if autocorrelation appear in the cross-sectional data, we will be calling it a special name, that is the spatial correlation, autocorrelation, that it is not due to time, it is due to space. Now we are going to define what is the term autocorrelation. Autocorrelation is simply the correlation between member of series, any series. But if we are talking about the autocorrelation, we are talking about the error term. This is the correlation between members of series observations ordered in time. As it is a problem of time series data, so if there are observations, for example, from 1947 to 2013, in case of any variable in Pakistan, for example, the GDP, taxes, savings, investment, whatsoever, so if there is some link, if the previous observation is affecting the later one, there may be autocorrelation between the residual term, and we will be calling it that this is the autocorrelation. If you remember that the classical linear regression model assumes that the expected value of ui uj ui and uj, these are the any two error term, and these should be equal to 0, and the I should be different from j. It means that you are not taking the autocorrelation of the same residual term with itself on. Put simply, we can define it another way, that the disturbance term relating to any observation is not influenced by the disturbance term relating to any other observation. So there are, you can say, there are residual. So residual of any of the observation is not affected by any of the residual of other observation. So this is the autocorrelation. We can give one or two examples. For example, if we say that this year the production in agriculture sector is low due to any of the factor, but we can't say that in the next year, that is the 2014, that the agriculture production will be low, because on this basis it cannot be predicted that there is no reason to believe that in the next year there will be low production. Similarly, if nowadays I say that in this year there were huge strikes in some of the industry and the production was low, so on this basis I can't assume that the production in the next year will also be low. So it means that there is no correlation between the series that this is affecting our other one. Similarly, I can give another example. For example, you are a person, and I can't say that your consumption behavior affects your neighbor consumption behavior. So this is the case, that if these are the independent, then there is no autocorrelation. But if the vice versa, if the situation is reversed, we may say that one behavior is being affected by the other behavior. So we can say that there is a problem of autocorrelation. Autocorrelation and serial correlation. Most of the time we will be talking about autocorrelation, and it also means there is no difference between autocorrelation and serial correlation if we are talking simultaneously these two words. People nowadays, it has become a norm that these are synonymous to each other, but there is a very small difference. If you want to go into a bit deeper, you will come to know that there is a very small difference between these two terms. For example, autocorrelation is a lag correlation. Lag means correlation, the error terms of this period is attached, or you can say the correlated with any of the other term of a given series with it itself. This is a very interesting difference. For example, if I say that this is a series, these are observations 70, 80, 60, 50. So if any of these these are, for example, I say these are linked, so this is called the autocorrelation. But what is then serial correlation? This serial correlation is between two different series. The values are linked, but now this is not from the same series. There it is from different two series. For example, if I give a name ut, now I have used the word t. T is now for time, because this is a problem of time series data. So every time I will be using the subscript small t, denoting that this is something related with the time. So for example, this is a series ut. This is 2, 4, 6 and 9, and I say that there is another series, that is the vt. This is 5, 7, 3, 2. If now observation, for example 4 or 7 are related, this is called the serial correlation. So now what is the difference? If two of the lagged value means, if you come to know for this is ut, its lag value could be ut minus 1, ut minus 2 and up to ut minus n. Similarly, if this is the series vt, its lag value will be vt minus 1. Vt means at this time, vt minus 1 in previous time. For example, vt minus t minus 1 is the previous year, that is the 2012. T2 minus t minus 2 is the most previous year, and similarly it continues. So vt minus 1 is to vt minus n. So this is the lag values. So what is the autocorrelation? The same series, any of the lagged values are correlated with each other. But the serial correlation, two different series, and any of the lagged values are related to each other. But in this, from now our discussion, we will be totally talking about autocorrelation, and we will not allow you to differentiate what is the correlation and what is the serial correlation and the autocorrelation. We will be using them synonymously, and our purpose is to show the correlation between the same series and the lagged values. If you see that some patterns of auto and no autocorrelation, you can see from here that something is special there. For example, if you see, this is UT and this is UT hat. UT, you know, the error term of the population that is not directly observable. We observe it from the estimated UT, and I remember that you know that what is the UT? The error is YI, that is your observation, and minus YI hat. So I keep on refreshing your memory at different stages, because as I start new one, I save your time to go back to see that what is UT. I just suppose that although you know this, but I just give you can say the flash of this idea, and you immediately capture this. If you look at this, these are residual disturbance term, error term that I have plotted against the time. On the horizontal axis, the time, there is vertical axis UT. If you look at the first series, look at there, it is showing some pattern from here to here, from here to, it is going in a systematic way. And now I am suspicious about that why the error terms are not random, why they are showing some link with each other. For example, if you start from here and you come here, you can immediately guess that the next error term will be upper than that. And if you have followed this trend, you can say that now the error terms are showing a negative, or you can say downfalling trend. So if this is the case, there is autocorrelation. In this case, there is autocorrelation. Now I think you have immediately got this idea. If this is the case, there is also autocorrelation. Look at here, it is also showing some of the systematic trend. This is also showing a systematic trend. So it means for the first four figures, A, B, C, and D, there is autocorrelation. There is some different kinds of autocorrelation, for example, minus, plus, or this one, but at this time, I am not going to in this detail, I am just showing that the residual term, that you estimated the model, you got the residual term, you tried to check that whether there is autocorrelation, and when you try to check this, you plotted this, and when you plot this, you came to know that there is a systematic trend. So when there is a systematic trend, you should be very, very suspicious that why it is happening, why the residual or the error term of one period is being predicted on the previous period, or why it is getting information from the previous. So there is autocorrelation. But fortunately, you see, if I suppose you run a regression model and you came up with the plot of this residual term, and you saw that now these are randomly, and if I would like to draw this on this, I can simply say that they are going random. So one cannot be predicted on the previous. So these were some of the general pattern of the autocorrelation. Sources of autocorrelation. Why there is autocorrelation? So we are talking about sources of autocorrelation. The first is the inertia. I know I am not teaching you the physics in which this word is extensively and intensively used. I am teaching you the quantitative techniques. So inertia. Inertia means that there is some built-in momentum within the variables. For example, if you know, there are many economic variables that have some built-in inertia, or you can say the momentum. For example, when there is boom, I say there is prosperity everywhere, many of the variables are increasing. For example, if the boom starts in Pakistan, GDP will keep on increasing. Employment will keep on increasing. Savings, investment, everything will be showing positive indicator. But if you see for the last 5 or 6 years, you will come to know that there was not the prosperity, or you can say there was boom, but I say to some extent there was recession. So when there is a recession, everything is decreasing. Everything means major indicator of the economic variables are decreasing. So what was this? So if this is the case, so one value of a variable is above this, and if it is declining, it is showing also a systematic trend. So if this is the case, then the successive observations are likely to be not independent, or you can say the interdependent. So this is the situation. For example, if I see your weight over time, your weight kept on increasing from the first day to up till up till today, because there is a systematic trend and there is some interdependence of the observation. Similarly, I can say that if you are around about 20, 22 or 23, so according to the theory, your height keeps on increasing. So what this means, that the observation of one period, for example in 2012 your height was 5 feet, I can say in the next, I am talking about the most of the time the female, because your height may be at this time 6 as you are in the MPhil PhD student. So far I am just taking 5 feet, but I can now guess in the next year that your height may be 5 feet 2 inches, 3 inches or whatsoever. So this is the built-in inertia. In other words, you can say the momentum of the variable that makes the observation interdependent rather than the independent. The second thing we will be talking about, that there is an specification bias. Due to specification bias, there may be autocorrelation. Specification bias in the model, autocorrelation in your residual term. So what is this? We will be talking it in two cases. The first is that maybe by chance, laziness, or due to any ignorance, you were unable to set the correct model and you excluded some of the very important variable. For example, if I say I would like to just keep my concentration or 2 or 3 examples that I like to repeat many times. So this is, for example, this is I say that this is the demand, quantity demand at beta 1 minus beta 2 price. I run this model. So this is, but at the end, when I plot the residual, I came to know that they are dependent and they are showing some systematic trend. So they are autocorrelated. So what I will be doing, for example, I add another variable, that is, you can say, the prices of the substitutes. I say that these are the prices of the substitute. Now again I run the regression, and when I plot my residual that I have obtained from the regression, I became happy that there is no systematic trend. Now my residuals are, this is time, now they are showing this kind of random term. So in the first, when I was using only this one up to model up to here, then there was some problem in the error term. So what was this problem? This was exclusion of a variable that was important. So sometimes as we include a very important variable, our model becomes correct and we say that there is no problem of autocorrelation. But if there is specification bias, there may be, I always use the word maybe, there may be the problem of autocorrelation. The next is that the incorrect functional form. As we know now, we have come to know that there are many functional forms. For example, if I take this, this is, what is this? This is the marginal cost and it depends on the output, and I say that it also depends on the output square, non-linear relationship. This is the textbook model, but what I say, I am bit lazy, you can say, that I run this model, marginal cost is equal to beta 1 plus beta 2 output. So what I did, that rather than non-linear model, that is in the variable, not in the parameters. Because if I am talking about the non-linearity in the parameter, I am hitting the very basic assumptions of the classical linear regression model. But at the same time, I would like to clear that it doesn't mean that we can't estimate when the model is not linear in the parameter. We can estimate, but this is discussion beyond our course, or you can say beyond at this time our limit. So what I was talking about, that the incorrect functional form, many functional form, the textbook theory says that there is a nonlinear relationship between the output and the marginal cost. What this means, that as you increase the input, the marginal cost changes not within a systematic trend. There is something non-linear relationship. I will be showing it on the diagram. So what this happen, if you see here, this is the output Q and this is the marginal cost. For example, this is the true model, that is the non-linear model, and it is now MC marginal cost is equal to beta 1 plus beta 2 output plus beta 3 output square. So this is the model. So what I did, I said no, due to any reason I applied this linear model. This linear model, what this shows, this is marginal cost is equal to beta 1 plus beta 2 output. I said no, due to any mistake, or due to my, you can say, lack of knowledge, or due to my laziness, or whatsoever the reason may be, I estimated the model, that is this one. So what will happen? If you see, if I give this is the point A and this is the point B. So what is this? From point A to B, my model is overestimating the marginal cost. The real marginal cost is lower than from here to here, but my linear model, that is the linear and the smooth model, now what is it showing? That it is overestimating. It is becoming over efficient. The marginal cost is lower, but it is showing a higher trend. So what this means? It is not portraying the true picture. It is hiding something information. It is misguiding me. So I have to avoid this. And how I will come to know? I will be checking for the autocorrelation. So if you see before the A point and after the B point, you can see that my model is underestimating. The marginal cost was higher, but my model is showing that there is low marginal cost. So at this point, it is overinflating or underinflating. So this is not showing the true picture. So what is this? If I use the wrong functional form, there may be the problem of autocorrelation, again using the word maybe, because it may be due to many of the problem. So I am talking about the one by one, and it is not necessarily true that if there is the wrong functional form, there is every time there is autocorrelation, there may be any of the other problem. So most of the time, as we have to check this, it may be due to this rather than doing this one. For example, if this is, so I plot the residual, I am just giving you the example, and the residual show this time. But if when I estimate that is the true model, I say that the residual, this is the time, this is your estimated residual, they are showing such kind of trend. So this could be the one reason. So we talked about the two reasons. The first is the inertia, the second is. Now there is a very important phenomena, that is the Cobb-Webb theorem, Cobb-Webb phenomena. Cobb-Webb phenomena is a very interesting phenomena that says that the decision in these periods are affected by the previous period. Very interesting. For example, if the price of wheat, the government set the price of wheat today 2,000 rather than 1,000 per month per 40 kg. In this year, our production will remain the same. because we can't immediately do this, but in the next year there will be incentive for the farmers and they will be increasing the production. So what is this? If you look at this, so this is the supply in time t. For example, if this is and beta 1 plus beta 2 pt minus 1 t minus v, pt minus 1, the price of the previous period. So this is the Kava phenomena that is a very important, because the price, the supply, particularly the supply is affected by the previous decision. पिछले साल प्राइस में इजाफा हुआ, इस दफ़ा प्रोडक्शन में इजाफा हुआ जो है वो उसके नतीजे में देखने में आया. So this is the Kava phenomena, and what happens now? The information is being extracted from the previous year to this year. So we say that there is the probability, there is the possibility, there is the chance that the autocorrelation may appear into our data. So this was the Kava phenomena. It can be explained in many of the other terms. For example, if you are thinking that you will be given some bonus in the previous year, when you worked in the factory, you got good bonus, and this time you are working hard. So this time you are working hard is based on the previous knowledge, the previous your bonus, and it is quite possible that you are even going to get more bonus as you are putting more effort into this. The fourth reason for this is autocorrelation is the lags. Lags means that now the dependent variable is also appears with a lag into the independent variable. For example, if you see that we are talking most of the time about the consumption. Our consumption though depends on income, but it also depends on our previous consumption behavior. This is something I think new for you, that our consumption is, you can say that it is definitely it is affected by the income positive relationship, but it has some link with our previous consumption behavior. If our consumption behavior in the previous was high, it is very difficult for us to reduce this. There is the probability that it will increase over time. So if you look at this consumption behavior, I would like to that this is C is equal to beta 1 plus beta 2, now this is Y income, plus beta 3, now C T minus 1. Consumption of today is dependent upon income and the consumption of the previous behavior plus UT, that is the error term there. So this is the phenomena, and this is the situation. If your current behavior is being influenced by your previous behavior, then there is also the autocorrelation, and there may be the problem of autocorrelation. The other sources, the still sources are not, we have just studied the four. What is the fifth? Manipulation of the data. Most of the time we get the raw data, but then we manipulate it, we massage this data. For example, if I take the quarterly data, quarterly, as you know, this is, for example, this is GDP, and there are, as you know, 4 quarters in a year. 1 quarter is equal to 3 months, and you are aware of this, that State Bank is also issuing its monetary policy quarterly. So for example, GDP is for quarter, this is first quarter, it has 4 observation, for example, first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, and fourth quarter. So what is this? I say this is 2010. 2011, it has also 4 quarter, 1, 2, 3, 4. And similarly, 2012, it has also 4 quarter, 1, 2, 3, 4. This is the raw data. So what we will be doing, if you see most of the time, you see for 1 year only there is 1 observation of the GDP. What this means, that what we take these 4 observations, we take the sum of these 4 observations and divide it by 4. So what this means, we are taking the average of 4 quarters. So what is doing this? This is suppressing our data, and this is making the smooth our data very smooth. There are fluctuations, but when we are taking the average, the fluctuations are out of the you can say the picture, and there is smoothness of the curve. So when there is smoothness of the curve, this kind of massaging of the data, this is called that this is, you can say, the manipulation of data, and this can result in the autocorrelation. Similarly, there is another problem for this is interpolation. The previous was, that was the also manipulation of the data, that we say that is the we take the average of, and we do not allow the different trends, and we take the smooth for this. There is another problem. Sometimes we have to interpolate the data. For example, very interesting, if you know, in Pakistan there is population census every 10 years. After 10 years there is population census. So for example, if I say that if it was, supposing that it was in 1990, and then I suppose that it was in 2000. Now if I need the population of Pakistan in 1995, now what is this? We have not counted our population, but for these years from starting from 1991 to 1999, I have to interpolate the values that are the missing values. So when we interpolate the values by any of the method, there are now very sophisticated method to interpolate this. We say that when we interpolate this, we massage the data, and ultimately there is a result, that is the autocorrelation. The sixth problem from where it can appear, it is the data transformation. Sometime we have to transform the data from one shape to another. So in first difference transformed model, errors become correlated, and as the error terms become correlated, then we say that there is autocorrelation. For example, if you see that this is yt is equal to, taking a very simple example, beta 1 plus beta 2 x2. Now I am showing variable nt, and I say that if this difference, this relationship holds in this year, it is necessarily true that this relation should hold for the previous year. So what I take yt minus 1 previous year is equal to beta 1 plus beta 2 x2t minus 1. So if I take the difference of these two equations, it will become yt minus 1. So this is equal to beta 1 minus beta 1 plus beta 2 x2t minus x beta 2 xt2 minus 1 x2t minus 1. I have deliberately ignored the error term to keep the thing simple. If you see that this is simply yt, change in yt. So this will go out of this will be this one, and this is beta 2, and in this xt minus xt x2t minus 1. So I can write it that delta yt is equal to beta 2 delta xt. Xt now is equal to x2t minus 1. So what is this? Now delta means the change. Now for example, if these variables are, I say, in the log form, if these variables are in the log form, so when we take their difference, they will be showing the percentage change. We started our model, we were in, this was the level form of the variables, but what we did, we transformed the data, and when we came to know at the end of this, we said that if we take the difference, and fortunately or unfortunately our variables are in the log form. When there is a log form, you take the difference, it becomes simply the percentage change, and in other words you can say this becomes the growth rate. For this you will have to go through some of the mathematical book or the standard quantitative technique books. I am not going to discuss this problem here. So this is the case. Look at this. This was our model, but we transformed due to any reason, and now if you estimate this model, there is the problem, chances and the probability that your error term becomes autocorrelated. And the last one is that there is non-stationarity. In the time series data, this is the very big problem. First of all, we will have to know that whether our variable are stationary or non-stationary. Very lengthy, very interesting and very deep this discussion. I have to just give you only a touch of this discussion because there are books on the total time series data. So this is the problem of time series data. I am just showing you that if your variables are non-stationary, then there is the problem of autocorrelation. So what is the difference between correlation and the stationary and non-stationary? Look at here. If a mean, the variance and the covariance of any of the series, any of the variable remain constant over time, then the series is stationary. But if these things are not constant and these are changed, the series becomes non-stationary. And if this is the case, that your series is non-stationary, then you will be seeing that your error term may be correlated, and there may arise the problem of autocorrelation. So I would like to just show you that I avoided in the previous example, or you can say previous diagram, that there I showed that there is autocorrelation. Again, autocorrelation is the relationship between the residual term. So this is the residual term. Look at this. In this diagram, I have plotted it against the time. It is showing some systematic trend, and if I plot ut and the previous terms of the different observation, you will come to know that this is the positive correlation. And on the other hand, you can see that this is the negative correlation. So the autocorrelation. So there is negative as well as positive autocorrelation. So when we speak autocorrelation, we are talking about both. Either it is negative or it is positive. We are not differentiating. Two are equally lethal for our OLS estimators. Our only purpose is to see that what is its implication on our OLS estimator. Consequences, repercussions, implications, and you can see that what are the effects of this autocorrelation. If there are low effect, or you can say the very small effect, we will ignore it and we will run the OLS estimators and we will run the regression. OLS estimators are no more below. This is your very famous property, not your, but your estimates famous property. Best. They are now linear, they are unbiased, but like heteroscedasticity, they are no more best. No more best. I am not talking about the West Indian fast bowler Tinu Best. I am talking about the property of your estimates have below. You know, according to the Gauss-Markov theorem, that states that under the certain assumption, your estimates are below best, linear and unbiased. Look at this. This is a very serious problem, and like heteroscedasticity, we should immediately raise our eyebrows and we should see it keenly and with curiosity that what is their problem. In the first multicollinearity, you remember that there was not any of the problem. Our OL estimate were below. In the heteroscedasticity, they were not below. The first property was less, that was the best. And here it is also the problem. And you know that when we say that a estimator is not best, when it has not the minimum variance among its competitors. They are unbiased. Our estimates beta 1 hat, these are beta 1 hat and beta 2 hat, they are unbiased. I think this will be over and over repetition if I tell you that what is the unbiased. So I am not going to tell you what is this. It means they have no minimum variance. When I say they are not biased, they have no minimum variance. The finding is similar to the presence of heteroscedasticity. So the repercussion, the consequences, or you can say the implications of the autocorrelation are similar to that of the heteroscedasticity. The detection method, the source of autocorrelation, and the remedial measures are much different from this. Now our purpose is to get below estimates because they are more reliable. So what we use, that is the method, that is the GLS, generalized least square. So I will be talking about this, that what is generalized least square. Go to the heteroscedasticity discussion. There we used, if you remember, WLS, weighted least square. Here we will be using it, generalized least square. So what is my suggestion? That use GLS estimators rather than OLS estimators for hypothesis testing. When you have to test the hypothesis, you will have to use the GLS estimators rather than the OLS estimator, because if you will use the OL estimator, now it has not the minimum variance, it have enlarged your acceptance region, and you are coming with some of the insignificant effect you can see from here. Look at this diagram. If look at this, this is that is the top. This I say, this from here to here, this is the confidence interval when I estimated by GLS. For both OLS and GLS, there is a 95% confidence interval I have assumed, but you can see, if I want to show it here rather than here, you can see this is, for example, the distribution when I estimated from GLS. So I say that this is the acceptance region. So I would like to say that this is the GLS 95% acceptance region. Now come to this one. This is this due to, again, you can say this is of this one. So I say, now look at this, I say that this is the critical region and this is the OLS 95%. So I would like to come this, because due to electric pen there is not exact clarity. Look at this, this is when this is the distribution of your beta 1, beta 2, whatsoever. This is when you estimated GLS, and that is the more spread, most diffused. This is by OLS. What is your null hypothesis? That your beta 2 is equal to 0. Look at this, for example, beta 2's value is here, where I am now rubbing here. So this is of this kind. Look at this, according to one distribution, it is being rejected. For example, GLS the confidence interval shows that it is falling in the critical region because GLS starts from here. So it is falling in the critical region. On the other hand, if you see, now this is falling in the range, it is falling within the confidence interval in the acceptance region when you are taking the OL estimator. So what is the message? When there is the autocorrelation, there is the problem of that your OLS estimators are no more below. What this means, they are not best, they have large variances, they have large standard error, and your acceptance region become larger, as you have seen it here. So what you do when you are going towards the hypothesis testing, you should use the GLS estimator rather than the OLS estimator. Detecting autocorrelation. Now what we study is what is autocorrelation, then we study what are the major sources of autocorrelation, then we came to completed that what are the implication, or you can say the consequences or the results of this autocorrelation. So what this means here is that there is a graphical method that will show, and this is the you can say the replication of the previous, and you can immediately guess. So help me to guess that where there is autocorrelation. These are your residual term and these have been plotted against time. I think you can say there is autocorrelation, there is a systematic trend, autocorrelation again, autocorrelation again, autocorrelation again. But here you can say that there is no autocorrelation in the your model. The run test, that is the first, you can say, the formal method of detecting autocorrelation. What this run test see, run means a trend. From the very beginning, from the outset, I should clarify that when this run means, it is not the run that are being scored in the cricket, or it is not the running as the athlete run. It is a run, it is a trend. So what will be the, if we now I start the systematic process of this, it is a bit lengthy but very, very simple. It is just on the supposition. I have supposed some of the things, and you will have to run fast with me so that we complete it. If we carefully examine the residual plot, now I am talking about a hypothetical phenomena, that I made some hypothetical phenomena, I set a graph, and now I am on that basis I am saying that if I carefully examine the residual, it may have several residual that are negative. If you go there, there are some negative, there are some positive. So I am saying, I am supposing that there are many negative as well as positive. Then there may be a series of positive residual. There may be, look at this could be negative, supposing these residual could be positive, then again negative. So what is this? Then again there are several residual that are negative. So this, for example, this is negative. There are many, for example, 10. This is plus, I say 20. This is negative again. These are, you can say, 5 residual terms. So what is this? We impose a question that if this is the trend, if these residuals that we obtained from the hypothetical data were purely random, we have to see this, that whether it is random. Intuitively, it seems likely, as we look at the diagram, we see that these are not random. They are showing some systematic trend. This institution can be checked by the run test. That was the only institution, that was our guess, that may be wrong, but now we can test it by the run test. To explain the run test, let us simply note down the signs. We have supposed that up to these are the minus residual term, these are the plus residual term, and these are the minus. I have just supposed this, and we will see that how we proceed. There are 9 negative, you can say there are 9 negative residuals followed by 21 positive. I say that these are negative, you can count these are the 9 negative. There are 21 positive residual, and then there are 21 positive and followed by 10 residual. And total is, this is minus, this is 21 plus and minus, and you can see that this is 9 plus 21 plus 10 is equal to 40. There are total 40 residual plot. For the first 9 are minus, the next are 21 are positive, just supposed, and the other next 10 are also negative. So this is, now define a run, a trend. A run here I would like to trend. Define a trend, an uninterrupted sequence of one symbol or attribute such as positive or negative. जब तक एक ही ट्रेंड चलता रहे, whether it is of plus or minus, we will call, when there is no interruption, लगातार जी चल रहा है, we will call it that this is one run. Look at this. From first 9, this is one run. For 21, this is the other run, and the last 10, this is the other run, because there is no interruption, no breakage of this. If there is, for example, breakage, and there are 2 or 3 minus, so there will be more run. So run is only one trend. So the second is over. Define the length of a run. There are 3 lengths. you can say the length of a run according to how many signs are there. If this is the first run, there are 9 observations, this is second 21, and the third. These observations, the number of observation is called the length of the, you can say, the run. There are 3 runs, we can say. Yes, a run of 9 minuses, you can see previously, this is the first one. The other is run of 21 pluses and a run of 10 minuses. So what is this? There are 3 runs. Run is a systematic showing of the same, you can say, the same sign, positive or minus. There is no interruption. As the interruption appears in, the new run starts there. Now what we are have to ask, are these 3 runs in our model? There are 3 runs in our illustrative example consisting of 40 observation. Now we are imposing a question. हम ये कह रहे हैं कि हमारी ये जो 40 ऑब्जर्वेशन थी, इसमें 3 जो है वो आए रन, क्या ये बहुत ज्यादा हैं या कम हैं, किससे, जो हम रेंडमली एक्सपेक्ट कर सकते हैं. We are supposing that there are, now we are just imposing the question that whether these 3 trends are 2 more or 2 less than the expected, strictly you can say, the random sequence of 40 observation. For example, we say that there are 40 observation and I suppose that there are 25 random trend. Every 2 plus minuses, then pluses, minuses, pluses, minuses, pluses, and the story keeps on. And I say that there are 25 random runs. So what this means, we are imposing now question that we have seen there 3 runs, whether these are more than 2 more, you can say many more than the random runs, or these are the less than the random numbers, random trends or runs. If there are too many runs, for example, if our 3 are greater than the random that are accepted, it would mean that in our example, residual change sign frequently. Random फर्ज किया 2 थे, हमने शो किए 3 random trend, 3 trends. So what this means, our signs are changing very frequently. But if I suppose that there are 25 random turns and we have only 3, it means as compared to the original phenomena, our trend is changing its sign very slowly, like Mr. Tuk Tuk, that is the Misbah al-Haq. So similarly, if there are 2 fuse, I have explained this. So what is this? Now we want to bring this into some of the formula. So as it will come into the formula, then we will be able, now this is the n total number of observation. This is n1 plus n2. N, the capital N, is total number of observation. And what is n? Number of plus symbols. If you go there to our previous example, there is 21. The n1 is 21. I can write here on the basis of 21. I can write against this that there are 19 minuses. So whether I write first minuses or pluses, the total will remain the same. N2 number of minus symbols, you can say there are total observation and it is 40 observation and it is 1940. So this is N1, this is N2, and this is total number of observation. But at the same time you can say this is N2, this is N1, and total observation remain the 40. R is number of runs. So if you are sitting before me, I would have imposed the question that how many runs are there, and you should immediately told me that there are 3 runs. Run means a systematic trend. Look at this. First run up to 9 minuses, 21, second run, and 10. There maybe you can take many runs and you will be explaining in on your own way. Now from these runs, what we are going to calculate? Now we are making the things measurable, quantifiable, as we are dealing with the quantitative techniques. We are not just throwing something in the air. So what this means, expected value of R, that is the run. So this is the mean. Mean, you know that this is N1, N2 multiplied by 2 over N plus 1. This is the formula for measuring its mean. And if you go towards the variance of this, everything is 2N1, N2 into 2N1 minus, this is the formula, and very simple. I am not just going to calculate, leaving everything on your responsibility, because there is no any, you can say, the parameter that is not known. N1 and N2 are just going, and you know what is the N1 and N2. On the basis of this, the mean and variance, you construct the confidence interval. Look at this, that the probability that this is your expected runs minus 1.96, 95% confidence interval है, तो इसके साथ multiply, this is the standard error of run. Remember our hypothesis testing of beta 2, this is the same confidence interval. Rather than beta 2 hat, we are using here expected value of run, that is also a mean. Similarly, it should be less than equal to this one and this one and this one. So if you see here, what is this? The calculation was that this is 10 point, expected value of this was this one, this was the variance, and this was the standard error. And when we applied the put the values here, we came to know that this is our confidence interval. So this is its lower limit, this is upper limit. You can calculate, and I expect you will be calculating it right today, so that this is the lower limit of the confidence interval, lower, and this is the upper. Now we have, you know, we have 3 runs. Now look at this. This is, for example, this is the, I would like to show it here. This is the lower limit 4.8728. This is the upper 7.0722. See whether our 3, that is our run, that is, you can see here our around which this is R. Now look at this, whether it falls into this or not. It is not falling it. We will be rejecting, this is the H naught. We will be rejecting the null hypothesis, because our theory is falling someone here in the critical region. So now what is the rule of thumb? Decision: do not reject the null hypothesis of randomness if R, the number of runs, lies in the preceding confidence interval. अगर आपका इस confidence interval में आ गया, इसमें, that is here, we will not reject the null hypothesis. And if it is outside, like in our case, we will reject the null hypothesis. And what is what is the null hypothesis? We reject the null hypothesis if the estimated lies outside these limit. You can choose any level of confidence interval. I have just chosen the confidence level of 5%. You can choose alpha 10%, 20%. In this way, your this confidence interval will become a bit changed. So if you see, we have rejected the null hypothesis. What was the null hypothesis? There is no autocorrelation. Autocorrelation. This was our null hypothesis of this run test. So what this? Now we have rejected that. What this means? There is autocorrelation in the model, or you can say, so this there is autocorrelation in the model, and you can say that you have rejected the null hypothesis. If you look at here, it shows that there is autocorrelation, because your residual terms are showing some systematic trend. If I want to make this trend, for example, maybe these are first minus going up and this. So if these are the residual, this is the time, and these are the residual, you can say that there is a systematic trend. So our intuition is now verified by the run test. There are many other tests for this. We will continue our discussion, but at this time I would like to give you the brief summary and would like to close this lecture. So what we covered today? Very interesting thing, the third problem of the linear regression model, that is the autocorrelation. Simply speaking, if any of the two residual terms are correlated with each other, we say that they are getting information from each and other, and we say that now there is a problem of autocorrelation. What are its, you can see from where it comes into the data. Before talking its sources, I would like to give you the difference between serial correlation and autocorrelation. The serial correlation is the correlation of any two observation of two different series, but at the autocorrelation is the you can say the correlation of any of the two observation of the same series. But nowadays this differentiation has been overruled, and the people are using autocorrelation synonymously. There is no difference for this. So what are the sources? We talked about that why it comes into our data. The first reason was inertia, the momentum, that the many of the economic variable, either they are increasing in boom, they are decreasing in the recession, or you can say when there is crisis. The second reason was that why this comes to our data, that was the specification bias, that either we specify our model, either we exclude a very important variable, there is chances that our residual term become autocorrelated, or if we take the wrong functional form, we can say that there is a problem of autocorrelation. There were also other sources that transformation of data, you can say, the other was the manipulation of data. The other sources, we talked about this, that due to these reasons autocorrelations comes into our data. The next was that what is, if it is in our data, should we run the OLS without any consideration? No. If we will run the OLS estimators, now we will be able to estimate our parameters, but at the same time now they will not be below. They will be linear, they will be unbiased, but at the same time they will not be best. What this means, they have now larger variance, and as a result there will be larger standard errors, and you immediately now came to know that as the error increases, variances increases, as standard error increases, your acceptance region becomes large, and most of the time rather than rejection you are going to accept the null hypothesis. That put question marks on the reliability and the significance of your statistics. So after this, how to spot or how to guess that whether there is autocorrelation or not? The simplest way is the graphical method. Run the regression by OLS, ignoring that there is autocorrelation, and now plot the residual. If residual are randomly scattered, you can say that there is no autocorrelation, but still if they are showing some of the systematic trend, you will have to know that there is a problem of autocorrelation. Then the other method we saw, that is the run test. Run means trend. So what we just build our intuition, or you can say our phenomena, on the hypothetical example. You will be thinking that why I am talking about the hypothetical data. If I take the real data and do it manually, it will consume extraordinary time, and we have a very small time, and we are running fast, and we are now we have increased our speed nowadays. So what was the run test? Just I would like to give you some of, you can say, the brief sketch of this. We make the run. What this means, that how many trends are there. One trend is called when there is only one same you can say the signs. For example, if there are uninterrupted or brokenless series of minuses, this is one run, then there is pluses, this is one run, minus, pluses, it is run. On the basis of these runs, we calculated some of the observation, and then we built up the confidence interval, and we saw that if our run, we know the run, how many run are there, if our number of run fall into that data, we are unable to reject the null hypothesis. And null hypothesis is that there is no autocorrelation in the data, but as it falls in the our critical region, as you saw in this example, we say that we reject the null hypothesis. That was that there is no autocorrelation. As we reject this, it means indirectly we are saying that there is autocorrelation in the data. We will continue our discussion till that time, until the next lecture. Take care and Allah Hafiz.